The lobby of Innovatech Solutions was polished to a mirror shine. A world of success and ambition reflected in the marble floors. It was a temple to modern business, and its high priest, CEO Julian Blackwood, was walking through it. He moved with a purpose that was both natural and intimidating, his sharp suit a uniform of command. He was buried in quarterly projections on his tablet, his brow furrowed. Then, a small, wavering voice cut through the professional hum of the lobby. "Sir?" Julian didn't look up, assuming it wasn't for him. The voice came again, this time with a little tug on the sleeve of an employee standing nearby. "Sir, my mommy's crying in the bathroom." This time, the words hit him. Julian Blackwood stopped dead, his focus shattered. He slowly lowered his tablet, his gaze shifting from the cold numbers on the screen to a small, 6-year-old girl with huge, worried eyes. His expression, a mask of executive detachment just a moment ago, softened into one of deep, undisguised concern. He looked from the child's anxious face to the stark white door of the women's restroom. Voiceover. They said our company was a family, that we took care of our own. But a 6-year-old girl in the middle of my corporate lobby was about to show me what a huge lie that had become. My name is Julian Blackwood. On the outside, I had it all. I was the founder and CEO of Innovatech Solutions, a company I'd built from a garage startup into a billion-dollar tech giant. My office on the 50th floor was my kingdom, a glass box where I could look down on the city I'd conquered. I had a team of executives who fed me reports and data. They told me employee satisfaction was at an all-time high. They showed me slick presentations on our people-first culture. We even had a slide deck that proudly said, "At Innovate, we're not just a team, we're a family." I was starting to hate that phrase. It felt hollow. It was a marketing slogan cooked up in a boardroom by people who, like me, hadn't actually talked to an entry-level employee in years. I built this company on innovation and on understanding what people needed before they even knew it. But somewhere along the line, I'd gotten disconnected from the most important people of all, the ones doing the real work. I wasn't running a company anymore. I was managing a spreadsheet. The faces of my employees had just become data points on a chart. Their struggles, their lives. I couldn't see any of it from 50 floors up. I tried to remember my own start. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I worked 3 jobs to get through college. I knew what it felt like to choose between keeping the lights on and buying groceries. I knew that quiet panic when your car breaks down and you can't afford to fix it. Had I forgotten all that? Surrounded by fancy wood and skyline views, had I become one of them? The kind of exec who sees people as costs, not assets? That thought scared me more than any bad quarterly report ever could. So, I decided to do something crazy. Not a full undercover boss thing with a wig and a fake mustache, but something quieter. I created a fake identity for myself, as Jay, a new hire joining the internal support team. It was my chance to get a ground-level view, to walk the floors as just another guy. My executive assistant, the only one who knew, thought I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But I had to know the truth. Were we a family, or was that the biggest lie we told ourselves? I had no idea the answer was about to find me in the lobby, thanks to a little girl with a heartbreaking question.
My first day as Jay was humbling. I was given a cheap polyester polo shirt with the Innovatech logo, a temp ID badge, and a cubicle so small I could touch both walls if I stretched out my arms. It was perfect. For the first time in a decade, nobody laughed nervously at my bad jokes. Nobody deferred to me. I was totally invisible. I was cutting through the main lobby at the end of the day, my head spinning with new names and rules, when I saw her. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, standing all alone near the security desk. She was clutching a worn-out teddy bear, her eyes scanning the faces of adults rushing past, all of them too busy to notice a lost child. I could see the worry on her face, and that parent instinct kicked in. Before I could walk over, I saw her work up the courage to approach a man leaning against a pillar, scrolling on his phone. I recognized him from the files. Mark Peterson, a department manager. He just oozed self-importance. The little girl, Lily, reached him and gave a tiny tug on the sleeve of his expensive suit. "Sir?" she started, her voice a whisper. Mark didn't even look up. "Sir?" she tried again, a little louder. "My mommy's crying in the bathroom." Mark Peterson finally glanced down, his face a mask of pure annoyance. It was the look of someone swatting away a gnat. "I'm busy," he snapped. "Go find your mother. This isn't a playground." He literally turned his shoulder to her and went back to his phone. The little girl flinched, like she'd been slapped. Her shoulders slumped and her big, worried eyes filled with fresh tears. She just stood there, hugging her bear, completely lost and rejected. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't just anger. It was a deep, burning shame. This was my company. This was my family. I walked over, ignoring Mark completely, and knelt so I was at eye level with her. "Hey there. My name's Jay. What's yours?" She looked at me, a little suspicious, but my calm voice seemed to help. "Lily," she mumbled into her bear. "That's a beautiful name, Lily. Is everything okay?" She looked toward the bathroom, her lower lip trembling. "My mommy went in there a long time ago. She's crying. I heard her." My heart just ached. What kind of pain was happening on the other side of that door? A few moments later, the door opened and a woman came out. Her face was pale and her eyes were red, but the second she saw Lily, she put on a mask of composure. She forced a brittle smile that didn't come close to her eyes. "Lily, honey, there you are. I'm so sorry, sweetie. Mommy just had to fix her makeup." She knelt down and fussed with Lily's hair, her hands shaking. She glanced at me, then at Mark, who was still ignoring them. A deep blush of embarrassment spread across her cheeks. "I'm so sorry," she stammered at the floor. "She won't be a bother again." She grabbed Lily's hand and practically ran off, disappearing into the maze of cubicles. I was left kneeling in the lobby with a storm brewing inside me. The cold lobby felt like a crime scene. The mystery wasn't just why the woman was crying. It was why a child's plea for help was met with such coldness. It was why a mother felt like she had to apologize for her own pain. I looked at Mark, who finally put his phone away and strode to the elevators like a man with important things to do. I knew then that my mission had changed. This wasn't about observing anymore. It was about understanding the silent desperation I had just seen. It was about finding out the story of the crying mother. The next morning I used my J identity to do some digging. The woman's name was Elena. She was a senior agent in customer solutions, Mark Peterson's department. Her file showed she was a model employee, great satisfaction ratings, perfect attendance until recently, glowing reviews. But in the last 3 months, a few flags popped up. A few late clock-ins, a couple of requests for unpaid leave that were denied. To an executive, they were just blips on a chart. To me, they were clues. I sent a coded text to my assistant, Sarah. I needed a reason to be in that department. An hour later, an official email announced that a few new hires, including Jay, would be cross-training in customer solutions to better understand the client experience. Walking into that department was like stepping into another country. The air was thick with tension. Dozens of agents sat in rows, headsets on, speaking in quiet, measured tones. Above them, a huge screen flashed real-time stats. Average call time, resolution rate. It was an empathy factory, and Mark Peterson was the foreman. He stalked the aisles like a hawk, his eyes darting between screens, his presence just sucking the air out of the room. I was put at a station right next to Elena. Up close, I could see the exhaustion carved around her eyes, and yet the second she put on her headset, her voice was warm, patient, and unbelievably professional. She handled a call from an angry customer with a grace that was just heroic. She was a master at her job. I tried to make small talk. You're really good at that, I said after she finished. She gave me a tired, small smile. Thanks. You learn to remember there's a person on the other end, not just a problem. The irony was staggering. She showed more humanity to a stranger on the phone than her own boss showed her face to face. Over the next few days, I just watched. I watched Mark publicly tear down an agent because a call went 30 seconds over target. I heard him tell a young dad he couldn't leave early for his son's school play, saying, "If it's not a medical emergency, it's not my problem." The culture wasn't just indifferent, it was hostile to the fact that employees had lives outside of work. That family slogan wasn't just a lie, it was a cruel joke. I made it my mission to befriend Elena. I brought her coffee. I asked about Lily's teddy bear, and her whole face lit up as she talked about her daughter. She had this fierce, protective love for her that was stunning. But every time I tried to ask about her, she'd expertly steer the conversation back to work. She'd built up walls, and I knew they were there for a reason. The breakthrough came on a Thursday, during our lunch break. Elena's phone rang and she slipped into an empty conference room for privacy. She thought she was alone. I was in the next cubicle and the walls were paper thin. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I couldn't ignore her voice, tight with desperation. "Please," she was begging someone. "I just need one more week. I have the money, I promise. It's just, we had an unexpected expense." There was a pause. Her voice cracked. "No, please, don't do that. My daughter, we have nowhere else to go. Just until the end of the month. I can pay extra. Please." Another pause, and then a sound that will haunt me forever. A choked, defeated sob. The call ended. My blood ran cold. I waited a few minutes, my heart pounding, before walking to the conference room. I found her slumped in a chair, her head in her hands, her body shaking with silent sobs. The mask was gone. This was just raw, unfiltered despair. I stood in the doorway for a second, then gently knocked on the open door. "Elena?" She jumped, her head snapping up. She frantically wiped at her tears, a fresh wave of shame washing over her face. "Jay, I'm sorry, I was just—" "Elena, stop," I said, my voice softer than I expected. I came in and sat down across from her. I couldn't help but overhear. "Is everything okay?"
That simple question, just acknowledging her pain, was all it took. The dam broke. The story she'd been holding back came pouring out. Her husband, a construction worker, had fallen from a scaffold 2 months ago. He survived, but with severe spinal injuries. He couldn't work. The insurance company was burying them in red tape. His physical therapy, his meds, changes to their apartment, it was all coming out of their pocket. They had burned through their savings in weeks. She'd been trying to pick up extra shifts, but Mark had just capped overtime to cut costs. She asked for a small pay advance, which was a standard company benefit, but Mark denied it, saying her performance metrics had slipped. Of course they'd slipped. She was being hounded by debt collectors and was sick with fear. Bringing Lily to the office was a last resort. The after-school program dropped her because Elena couldn't pay the bill. She'd have Lily sit quietly in the lobby for the last hour of her shift, just praying no one would notice. But Mark noticed. He pulled her aside and threatened to write her up for unprofessional conduct and for turning the office into a daycare. The call I overheard was with her landlord. She was being evicted. That's why she was crying in the bathroom. They had 72 hours to get out. She finally looked at me, her eyes just hollowed out with fear. "I don't know what to do, Jay," she whispered. "I've sold my mom's jewelry. I sold our other car. There's nothing left. I feel like I'm failing everyone. My husband, my daughter." I just sat there, listening, and the anger inside me turned into a cold, hard rage. This wasn't just a system failing. This was a human failing, a leadership failure.
My manager, Mark, wasn't just a bad boss. He was a gatekeeper of cruelty, using his little bit of power to crush someone who was already down. He was everything I was afraid of becoming. I looked at this brilliant, dedicated woman being broken not by her life, but by the indifference of the company she gave everything to. She wasn't a data point. She was a person, and she was drowning. And my company had just looked the other way. I had to act. But not as Jay, the new guy. The time for observing was over. It was time for the CEO to come back. The next afternoon, Mark Peterson called a mandatory team meeting. The air in the room was already tense. Mark stood at the head of the table, a smug look on his face. He was about to make an example of someone, and I knew exactly who. "Team," he began, his voice dripping with fake sincerity, "we need to talk about performance, about focus. This department is the face of Innovatech, and recently that face has been distracted." His eyes locked on Elena. She visibly shrank in her chair. "Elena," he said, her name sounding like an accusation, "your resolution times are down 12%. Your customer satisfaction has dipped. And I've had reports of you allowing personal matters to spill into the professional environment." My fists were clenched under the table. He was twisting the knife, using her private pain as a public weapon. "Effective immediately," Mark announced, puffing out his chest, "I'm placing you on a performance improvement plan. We need to see a drastic change in your commitment, or we'll have to reevaluate your position here." It was a corporate death sentence. A PIP is just code for "we're building a case to fire you." Elena looked utterly defeated. A single tear rolled down her cheek. The rest of the team just stared at the table, their silence a mix of fear and shame. I'd seen enough. "That's not what happened, Mark," I said. My voice was calm, but it cut through the silence. Every head in the room snapped toward me. Mark glared, his face turning red. "Excuse me? Who do you think you are, trainee? You don't speak in my meetings." I pushed my chair back and stood up, meeting his angry stare without flinching. "My name is Jay, and I think you owe Elena an apology." You could have heard a pin drop. Challenging Mark was completely unheard of. "An apology?" he sputtered, laughing. "She should be apologizing to me. You have no idea what you're talking about. You've been here 5 minutes." He pointed a shaky finger at me. "You're fired. Get out. Security." I smiled. A cold, tight smile. "That's the thing, Mark. You can't fire me." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I held it up. "And I can fire you." I hit a single number on my speed dial. The confusion on Mark's face was slowly morphing into a dawning, sickening horror. "Sarah," I said into the phone, my voice now carrying the full weight of command, "it's Julian. Could you and Mr. Davies from HR please come down to the 3rd floor conference room? Yes, right now. We have a management position that's just become available." I hung up. I let the name sink in. Julian. The room was dead silent. I watched the color drain from Mark Peterson's face. He stared at me, at my cheap polo shirt and temp badge, his mind scrambling to connect the dots. Elena was looking at me, her face a storm of shock, confusion, and a tiny, unbelievable flicker of hope. "I apologize to all of you," I said, my voice firm but quiet, speaking to the whole team. "I am Julian Blackwood, and I am sorry. I am sorry I allowed a man like this to manage anyone. I am sorry that I was so out of touch that I let a culture of fear grow right under my nose. I failed you, and that ends today." Just then, the door opened. Sarah, my executive assistant, and David Davies, the head of HR, walked in. They took in the scene, the terrified team, the ghost white Mark, and me standing right in the middle of it. The reckoning had begun. David Davies, our head of HR, looked from me to Mark, his professional calm barely hiding his shock. Mark Peterson seemed to physically shrink, all that arrogance he wore like a suit of armor just melting away into pathetic fear. "Mr. Blackwood, sir, I don't understand," he stammered. I didn't even look at him. I was looking at his team, at Elena. "Mr. Davies," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument, "Mr. Peterson's employment is terminated, effective immediately. Please escort him out of the building. The reason will be a complete failure to uphold our company's values, specifically employee welfare and respect." Mark started to make excuses, but Davies, a man who knows an order when he hears one, just put a firm hand on his shoulder and said, "Mark, let's go." As he was led away, he wasn't a tyrant anymore. He was just a guy who'd lost his job. He had built his little kingdom on fear, and it had crumbled with one call. The room was still silent, everyone watching me with a mix of awe and fear. I was still the CEO, the man from the 50th floor. I had to close that distance. I turned to Elena. She was still just sitting there, looking at me like I was a ghost. "Elena," and her name felt important. "What he did to you was inexcusable. It was a failure of our system and a failure of my leadership. But what you've been doing, that is the definition of strength." I addressed the whole room. "For weeks, as Jay, I've been listening. I've seen your commitment, and I saw you being managed by someone who cared more about numbers than people. That is not empathetic. That's why I am making another change. Effective immediately, I am promoting Elena to interim head of customer solutions." A wave of shocked whispers went through the room. Elena looked up at me with her eyes wide with disbelief. "Me? But I don't know how," I interrupted gently. "You know how to listen. You know how to treat people with respect. You know our customers and our employees are people, not problems. You've shown more leadership while fighting for your family than Mark showed in 5 years. We'll get you all the training and support you need, but the most important qualification, empathy, you've already mastered." I wasn't done. "Elena, I want you to take the rest of this month off, fully paid. Go home. Be with your husband. Be with Lily. Find a new place to live without an eviction notice hanging over your head." I looked right at her. "The company is wiring 3 months' salary to your account right now. Consider it a down payment on the debt we owe you. empathetic is also paying your overdue rent and covering the next 6 months. That eviction is gone." Tears were streaming down her face, but for the first time, they were tears of relief. Then I spoke to the whole team. This isn't just about one manager. This is about who we're going to be. I'm announcing the creation of the Innotech Employee Hardship Fund, a grant program for immediate financial help to any employee in a crisis. No red tape, just help when you need it. And, I continued, we are starting a full review of our policies on flexible work, family leave, and childcare. Because having a family isn't unprofessional, it's human. And from now on, this company is going to act like it. The atmosphere in the room had completely changed. The fear was gone, replaced by a fragile but real sense of hope. For the first time, the word family didn't feel like a lie. It felt like a promise. This story, while fictional, is inspired by the very real struggles people face and the huge impact of empathetic leadership. Studies show the vast majority of employees believe this kind of leadership inspires positive change, yet so many workplaces still miss the mark. If you believe that kindness is a strength and that true leaders lift people up, take a moment to subscribe and share this story with someone who needs to see it. It's funny. For years, I thought my job was to build a company. I was wrong. My job is to build a community. The last 6 months have been the hardest and best of my career. The first thing we did was launch the Hardships Fund. It wasn't just about the money. It was a signal that at Innotech, our people's well-being is a priority, that we see them as whole people. Elena thrived. She took her new role as manager and remade the department, building it on trust and support, not fear. She championed a new flexible schedule that let her team actually balance their lives. And productivity, it skyrocketed. Engagement went up, burnout went down. We learned a lesson a spreadsheet could never teach. When you take care of your people, they take care of the business. We started new training for all our managers focused on one thing, leading with empathy. We taught them to listen, to ask questions, to offer support, not suspicion. We started subsidizing childcare. The Innotech lobby doesn't feel so cold and sterile anymore. It feels human. A few weeks ago, I was walking through that same lobby. Elena's husband is recovering well. Lily was there, waiting for her mom. She saw me from across the room, broke into a huge grin, and ran right for me. She didn't see a CEO. She just saw Jay. She wrapped her arms around my legs in a hug. "Hi, Jay," she said, looking up at me. "My mommy doesn't cry anymore." And that moment, I felt a success more real than any stock price could ever give me. I had spent years building a tower of glass and steel, but I finally understood. A company's true foundation isn't its profits, it's its people. And the strongest leaders aren't the ones on the top floor. They're the ones brave enough to walk the ground floor and just listen. They get that leadership isn't about power. It's about kindness. It's about seeing the humanity in everyone. And it's about creating a place where no mother ever has to cry in the bathroom again.